Thank you.
Yeah, I'll start off. My name's Wesselschmidt. I'm the Public Works Director for the City of Grandview. I'm one of the co-chairs on the Owners Council along with Dan. So I've been at the City of Grandview for about 4 years. Been in Shawnee prior to that, about 32 years. And that's where I first started doing a little design build. My first experience with design build project was doing a skateboard park. Back then, there wasn't any architects or engineers that wanted to touch skateboard parks, and then with our insurance company said, well, yeah, you can do a skateboard park if you design it, build it, maintain it properly. So we kind of started looking into skateboard parks. Found out the only people that built skateboard parks were swimming pool contractors that also designed roads. So we ended up getting this outfit out of California, a bunch of skaters that did swimming pools, and so they would design the thing, and then they would build the thing, and then they would skate it, and then if they didn't like it, they would tear it out and start that over. So that was my first design build. Dan, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi, my name is Dan Wehmueller, architect by background. I work as an owner's rep at Newmark Zimmer. My experience with design build is largely, if not exclusively, on public sector vertical construction. So I was the internal to the Johnson County. I was the lead project manager for their Johnson County Courthouse in downtown Olathe, and I'm currently owner's rep and the Jackson County Detention Center. So those two projects have spanned about 7+ years or so of construction. A little bit of experience with it from the architect side. At that time I was a little young and naive, and I was like, why do I work for the contractor? And didn't quite get it. So I've come a long way on that end. As Doug said, I'm also on the owner's co-chair council. I work with him, marketing and the others, supporting and promoting design build, delivering that.
My name is David Schatz. I am a construction lawyer over at Fane. So I've been doing construction law exclusively for basically the last 23 years. My practice came through litigation. So in the beginning, all the projects I saw were screwed up. Since then, my practice is now probably about half and half between litigation and front-end contract work. About a third of my clients are owners. So I've represented like University of Kansas, State of Olathe, Garmin when they did their big expansion, several of the school districts around town. So work with them on kind of front-end stuff. I'm working through some of these contracts. In doing so, I've become a big fan of the design build delivery method, quite honestly, because I see fewer of those in litigation than I do any other type of project. And so when they asked me to help on the DBIA board, I said, that's something that I think I could really get behind and hopefully kind of expand it and make it even more user-friendly to everybody. So that's kind of my role.
Dave currently serves as the laws and regs chair of the regional board, and then Andy was our.
I was the former laws and regs for the previous 2 years, 2022 and 2023, and thankfully was able to take over the role. I am also a construction litigator here in town. I do some contract work, some litigation work. I have a varied background. I actually have a degree from KU in business with a minor in architecture and a master of architecture and architectural management. I then became a computer programmer because that made the most sense. And then I owned my own company for about 5 years. The events of 9/11 canceled all my contracts. I then had to figure out what I want to be when I grow up. I got into construction as a project superintendent, field superintendent, managing projects that after the designers were done and wanted nothing else to do with them, went out and helped contractors do the work. And as I was doing that, I got interested in the legal aspects of construction doing this now for about 13 and a half years. And I teach construction law at University of Missouri, Kansas City, UMKC's law school. And we were talking before that there's just not cases, even nationwide, that are design build. We just don't see a lot of litigation involving design build contracts. And I think that's a huge testament to this methodology, because problems get solved amicably, maybe with some angst, but they get solved and people move on, instead of getting to the end of the project and then everybody's slinging arrows at everybody else. So I joined the panel to help talk about PB for owners.
So just to, so for our benefit to know who we're talking to in the room, how many, by show of hands, are on the owner side? And then out of those hands, it looks like, from what I recognize, mostly on the public side, any on the private side, owner side. So, which is probably good, because part of the time we're going to be spending is just depending on what state you're in, what laws and regulations at the state level, and perhaps at your agency level, allows you whether you can use design build or not. We were talking yesterday, if you're on the private side, you can do anything you want. So, but well, within reason.
Contact your lawyer first, yes.
But again, yeah, just a lot of us would like to use it or jump into it, but we find out that there's some things that maybe hold us back. So that's what we're going to spend some time doing.
And we want this to be as interactive with you guys as you would like to be. I think it's always helpful to hear your guys' stories, your thoughts. If you got questions, by all means, you don't have to wait till the end. Just let us know if there's a topic that you want to hear a little bit more about.
Yeah, we're going to have some time to share. They're not going to be war stories because things turn out well. But maybe success stories on, here's a project where you use design build or some alternative delivery, and why it worked out so well, and why we didn't have to spend a lot of time with attorneys.
See that like bad?
Well, there's other things that they can do on it. I have a lot of attorneys. Again, I think, well, another question is, out of those that are on the owner's side, how much experience do you have with design build? Again, wanted to see if we're talking to new people in the design build side, or somebody that has a lot of projects under development. So I know Joe's got a number of...
new to it, but
Okay.
we have 3 main projects in design build.
And Joe, who are you with?
So we've got one who came out to do aggressive design build for Hunter Astro for kind of summer.
He's with the city of DeSoto.
City of DeSoto.
Yes.
He's got a pattern like.
Yep.
So then we've got aggressive design build for a wastewater treatment plant, and we got CMAR. It's a very similar process on our water treatment plant, and our ongoing conversion. So,
And then we have Stacy with us. She's with MoDOT. She's going to be on the owner's panel. That's coming up next. But her role is basically alternative delivery for MoDOT. So anxious to hear her thoughts, not only here but in the session as well. And then we have Mara Lenexa.
Yeah,
She's
because I'm a designer and a mayor.
well. That's right. That's right. She had a session this morning on kind of the F&E design build construction, and she's going to be on our next panel, sharing some of the experiences that Lenexa has with design build. Others? Yeah. So I don't think we're going to need to spend a lot of time on why we want to do design build. I mean, we've heard particularly with Lisa Washington about the speed of delivery, cost savings, collaboration, bringing ideas together, no need for lawyers at the end. Sure, up front we need them. So that's always the best time to use a lawyer, right up front as opposed to at the end. But with that, Let's go into your presentation, or your all on where we can use design build
In the States.
in the States.
Did I tell you I was in IT, so if I can't get this working, I'm not gonna get it. All right, the DBIA put out a 50-state statute report in 2021. And so we pulled some information from that to give you on DBIA Mid-America region, which of course is Missouri, Kansas, Nebraska, and Iowa. So, Dave, do you want to talk a little bit about Kansas or?
Sure.
Who's got it here?
So Kansas, it is pretty widely permitted. So we're going to focus obviously on Missouri, Kansas, Nebraska, and Iowa. Iowa will be the shortest because they don't really allow it. So, but Kansas does. It is widely permitted. There is a specific statute that talks about the ability that gives the governmental entities in the state of Kansas the ability to go about and do some of their construction through different delivery methods. Some of these are still all governed by statute, and that the legislature gets together and says, here are the rules by which the governmental entities in our state are able to operate. So state agencies, state educational institutions can use design build on state projects, but design build cannot be used for designing, constructing, altering, or repairing the public highways, the roads, the bridges, the dams, the turnpikes, standalone parking lots, with the exception of a design build pilot program project. And then it does have a certain state highway system projects can use alternative delivery methods under certain conditions. Shall not include the preservation projects, maybe use on free projects using toll revenues. Not more than 3% of the Eisenhower legacy program should be used on alternate delivery methods. So, and any project must exceed $100 million. So they have come out and said, you know, hey, here's the rules by which you, as an entity, a city, a mayor, or somebody in the state of Kansas, what you can and can't do with regard to design build.
I thought it was interesting that the projects must exceed $100 million.
I always thought that was weird too. Like, we're going to limit how you do it, but we're going to let you do it on the biggest ones
On the
because.
biggest ones, for KDOT, you can get out there, and I guess the assumption is that using building new roads is expensive, but it's also for maintenance. And I thought, wow, it'd be a really tough maintenance for over $100 million, but it's allowed, widely permitted per statute. Missouri has an interesting little carve out at $7 million. The political subdivisions are authorized to use design build, and for any kind of civil work, you can use design build. But if it's non-civil, you are limited to $7 million, and that was put in there by the American Institute of Architects because they wanted to have design bid build be the preferred method so the architects could be employed for projects over $7 million. Last year in 2023, a new bill was signed that allowed a carve-out for the Office of Administration, who can now use CMAR or design build for non-civil works, and they can have up to 5 projects running simultaneously in any fiscal year under $7 million. So the Office of Administration has a little more leeway. MoDOT is authorized to use design build on up to 2% of its projects, at least that's what it was. Is that still current? Okay. Sometimes these things change. That's what we have now. Nebraska got a slide here.
In Nebraska, it's pretty wide open. All political subdivisions are authorized to use design build for all projects except roads, streets, highways, water, utility projects. And then there is political subdivision, there's a different act that allows design build specifically for water, wastewater, utility, or sewer. Some of the transportation projects are eligible, and DOT is authorized to use design build in Nebraska. Also, the Game and Parks Commission may use design build on a best value basis regardless of the funding source. So, pretty wide open in the state of Nebraska to use your design build at the moment.
Iowa, in the 2021 summary put out by Design Build, DBIA, it states that the State Armory Board is authorized to use design build, and the Board of Regents was authorized to use design build. City contracts could be used if it was in the best interest of the city. In 2020 and 2021 and 2022, there was a big battle in Iowa in the legislature about introducing, DBIA actually had advocates up there trying to get design build to be more broadly adopted or available, especially in public projects in Iowa. And not only did the law not pass to allow design build, it actually prohibits the use of design build in Iowa. The Board of Regents lost their right to use design build, and all government entities are prohibited from using it. That was at the urging of the AIA and the horizontal constructors. So why they were concerned about DB on vertical, I don't know. Apparently, the rumor is there were 2 people that voted in favor of allowing DB, and after they passed their votes while the voting was still ongoing, one of them was pulled to the back room, one of them was pulled to the well. They talked to somebody, they came back and they changed their votes. So, very political in Iowa, and there's really not a lot of hope on the horizon. There's a couple senators we need to move on before we try again.
Yes.
So, I guess all of this, these states that prohibit carve up and, I'll watch my French here, but they, all this hodgepodge, it's mainly people buying influence is what it is. Because there's really no technical reason. It's not costing the states more money. It's, of course we are somewhat biased here because we talked about the advantages, but there's really nothing that you can say that hurts the state that, from doing design build. There's really no injury to the state. It's more of a, I got to buy my influence here. I got to keep my, my plot of ground so that I can do with it what I want. I mean, that's one of the things that I've always struggled with.
Well, I think you've got a couple different schools of thought, but I think a lot of it you're right, and that it's people with certain influence and trying to posture in a way that helps their the people they're looking out for. I think if you hear some knock about it, they go, well, the design bid build gives us the cheapest project, right? Because you design it, put it out there, and then you go get a bunch of competitive people bidding. And I think some of the fear or some of the arguments that people make against design build are, you get these guys together and they kind of go out and they do this project and they do what's best for them, and it may end up costing people money. And when those people are the taxpayers in a certain state, they say, we want this to be the cheapest and best option, not the one that makes the most money for the people who are doing the work. That's the argument that they try and make. And unfortunately, Andy and I run into this when you go and you argue a case before a judge. A lot of these legislatures, they have zero construction background whatsoever, right? So, they don't understand the process. They haven't built anything. They haven't constructed anything. They haven't been in a construction project where everybody's pointing the finger at everybody else because everybody's watching out for their own back, and had the benefit of seeing how the collaborative nature of the design build actually ends up benefiting the owner in the long run. When I represent my owners, the number one thing I want is I just don't want surprises. Right? We understand cost money, we understand construction's expensive, we understand there may be things that you can't plan, and there's going to be stuff that happens, but the biggest thing I want when I'm representing the owner is no surprises. And the benefit of design build, I think, to me, the biggest thing is it creates the conversation early and often about some of these things, and you avoid some of the unknowns that you get into, people kind of working on different islands. They say, well, I'm the designer, and the constructor goes, well, I'm just constructing with this guy over here to design, and it creates a much more of a collaborative type nature. But I think the problem is when you get pushback to people who don't understand the process and go, we want the taxpayers to pay the smallest amount possible in order to get the job done. The best way to do that is to put it out to a bunch of people and see who comes back with the lowest bid.
And yet, that doesn't always work that
No.
way.
Well, I think I'd say those that are making up the laws, they understand low bid.
Right.
I've got a bunch of numbers here, I'm gonna give it to the lowest one. Design build being more subjective on how they make the decisions, how the agency makes the decision on where they're going to go. I'm concerned about that subjectivity and not the absolute of low bid, particularly on the construction side. And that's just my perception. And then also, let's say on the design side, whether you're an engineer or an architect, again, that being subjective. If I'm not in good with that agency or they don't know me very well, they're just going to dole out that work to their friends and buddies. And how do I get my share of that work?
What's your thought, Andy, on why the AIA is so opposed to design build?
Well, and it really is interesting because the AIA nationwide is not opposed to design build. But pockets of the AIA are, and I think we saw that in Iowa. And I do think that you see it in more of the Midwestern state. I was meant to look this up the other day. I think there's only 2 other states that are like Iowa that don't allow design build. And they're big sky states, if I remember right. They're like Montana or North Dakota, up in there. So I think when you look at the demographics of those states, and you realize that there's a very small selection option or availability of design build firms, the local trades, designers or construction contractors, don't want outside companies coming in and taking the work away from them. And so that's why, that was the biggest argument in Iowa was, we don't want big firms coming in and taking our work, and none of us do design build, so if we allow design build, people are gonna go do that, because they understand the benefits of doing design build for the owner, but they don't want to erode their own. And so they're the constituents who have the legislatures here, and that's how that happens. And I also think, and Mark, you've been around in the DBIA longer, but I think that the same thing is happening because of my IT background. I also do data breach law. There's a patchwork of laws in data breach. Every state, every territory has their own law. Kind of the same thing here with design build, right? How you define the procurement process, how you define a builder, what makes up a design build entity. All those definitions are slightly modified and different. Those are because there are a lot of fingers in the pie. And I don't think the DBIA early on recognized the need for a static, framework that states could adopt. And so the DBIA kind of went into each state and helped each state adopt something that felt good for the state. And so we do have a patchwork of laws.
So their stance is, we're going to make sure that our folks get the best by limiting competition.
Yeah.
And that was one reason why they put caps.
Yeah, some of the caps are in
7
there.
million was so that the smaller firms could still do
Design
their
build.
work. Yeah, design to build, and it was the big guys coming in with bigger projects.
Yeah. That's why we have the 7 million in
That's
this.
pretty crazy.
Yeah, 7 million in Missouri. We have the 100 million on KDOT. So the smaller road projects are getting put out to the guys who work and live in Kansas or Missouri or Oklahoma, unfortunately. But that's where those thresholds come into play.
So if you're with, go ahead.
So in Iowa, I'm from Iowa, so kind of baffles me to be stuck for a month, but whatever. So it seems that the contractors were actually the ones advocating not to do design build because they basically didn't want to have to adapt and grow and learn how to do design build and potentially make more profits for themselves. They just want to keep doing it the way they've been doing it.
Yes, and isn't that one of our biggest pet peeves in this room when you ask somebody, well, why do we do it that way? And they say that's because we've always done it that way. Yeah.
Which leads me to the next part. Let's say if you're in one of the states that allows it, now agency purchasing policies, so whether you're a county or a city or a utility district, your purchasing policy may be out of date and not allow that. So, again, there's certainly resources that are out there through DBIA that can help. If you're needing to update your city's purchasing manual with respect to, you probably have a section on if it's a project bigger than this, it needs to be go out for bids. Again, there's some resources that a lot of people we can point you in the direction to, that if your city has an outdated section, there's some good examples out there. So, Dan, with you being on the owner's rep side, do you ever get approached by the city that's, wanting to use it, but it says, here's what my purchasing policy says?
What you just described fits the Jackson County model pretty accurately. As you said, it's perfectly fine to do it in Missouri. Jackson County we've never done it before. Maybe we'd like to. What do we have to do to get there? So it took our teams educating that group, on the project level up to your elected officials, trying to get them comfortable with that new approach and with the benefits of it. And that in itself is a learning curve. Of course, you've got to get over. But once we kind of crest that wave, really it's as simple as working with the county's legal department and asking the legislature to bring forward a resolution once everything was sort of knowledge levels high enough. That resolution was able to get through, and then that gave us the green light to do it. So, they had to basically dust off the books themselves and say, can we do this? So it took, it took a process, but 6 to 8 weeks to kind of get from
What is this to?
what is it,
Yeah.
to yes, we're going to go do it, and we're willing to make a resolution to make that happen.
Yes.
So, as a practitioner, you have to gain access to a purchasing department that maybe you don't normally have access to, right? In order to start initiating those conversations.
Yeah, I mean, in this case, we were hired as a consultant, so we were, I guess you could say, incentivized to do it. So, they had already opened those doors for us to an extent.
Like an owner's rep consultant or owner advisor consultant.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. We weren't, it wasn't that there wasn't a project and we had to go sell the idea. They wanted to do the work, and they were basically the most expedient, efficient way to do it, what makes our lives simpler. And that all started to align with design build once we explained it. And then, okay, let's go cross that bridge of how to get there.
So, for example, if you've been on the receiving end of a design build RFP, so they're soliciting for designers initially, have you ever seen those convert over to potentially design build delivery?
I've seen them convert from the type of design build, like maybe they initially thought, is it walls based, we want to do a competition, and I had one where they were going to do a competition and choose their architect that way, and then as we tried to educate them on, let's talk about stipends, let's talk about using taxpayer dollars to affirm this investment into it, and maybe get anything out of it, and having to maybe understand, let's live with what that design is, as opposed to be hands-on as a engaged client. We made that switch, to okay, we're doing it wall space, and we're not having a stipend, and we're going more hands-on. But in my experience anyway, it's been from, we know we want an alternative delivery method, but once we've gotten into the lane design build, it's just defining, is it phased in a progressive way? How do we?
I think KCI was kind of like that, where I know our firm as a design team was picked early, and then our contracts and everything assigned to the MEP contractors after the fact, once they became the design for the project.
Yeah.
Some of it is just changing the mindset of the owner. In my case, I've been doing projects for 20 years. The number of design bid build projects far outweighs the number of design build projects. So when I've got a new project coming up, I think, okay, I need to get an engineer on the project and then get a design. No, let's step back and figure out what is the method of delivery on that project. And so, that's where I need, I've got a handful of design build projects, but I still need help on, okay, how do I get this thing started? And, I find that what helps me is get an owner's rep on it, that's what they do day in and day out. And again, the resources through DBIA, the design build done right, it's a step-by-step book on how you do that. You get into the contract part, you got the DBIA contract documents, it's all laid out there.
So are there projects you think are better suited for design build versus design bid build?
Well, I can tell you a story on good and bad with design build, and this is coming from my design build team side, but it was our outer road project. And city project that was going through MoDOT, and it was involving an interstate. So I've got every agency involved. And when it came to needing some innovations, some changes, the review process was very long and drawn out. And the comment after the project was over, and it was a successful project from the engineer on the project. Well, maybe this wasn't the best project for design build because there wasn't room for a lot of innovation. The various levels of agency review was difficult. And I'll go in and tell the story on that project. So completing, and this is our outer road project where we're converting one-way outer roads to two-way outer roads along I-49 in the city of Grandview. And project was all done. We had the ribbon cutting for it. Mayor cut the ribbon along with other people. We had the Grandview marching band out there. It was a nice day. So after the ribbon cutting, contracting engineer invited us all out for lunch at a Mexican restaurant nearby, and so we're all sitting at a real long table there, and it just reminded me of Thanksgiving, just everybody sitting around a long table just enjoying the company. There was the MoDOT people, there was Grandview people there, there was the engineer and the contractor, and a few others. And I was just looking down there, and just everybody was enjoying this successful project. So I had a staff meeting or a department head meeting, maybe the week after that, I kind of explained, talk about the ribbon cutting, and I explained, just how it was a successful day and a successful project. And somebody asked, well, how do you define success? And I said, after the ribbon cutting, we were all sitting at a long table, having Mexican food, and everybody was enjoying everybody's company. I said, that's how I define success, because we weren't sitting at a long table taking depositions. And there was plenty of opportunity that project could have gone wrong from the very start, and that was on the owner's side, because we overlooked a few things, such as an environmental permit. And after we issued a notice to proceed, so, but because it was a design build project, because it was a collaboration, everybody was intent on making that thing work. On budget, on time, and we had Mexican food afterwards. That's how I decided.
Mexican Thanksgiving dinner.
Yeah, exactly. And it was in November, so that's what reminded me of it. So that's kind of my story on, again, maybe it wasn't the best project for design build, but because it was design build, we got some innovation in the project that made the project work better than the way it would have worked if it wasn't design build, and just all went together. And again, skateboard parks, because it's design build. But I've got one coming up that I'm going to be talking with Stacy on. And I think maybe I talked with Joe before Joe was at DeSoto, when he was working for a consulting firm, he was talking about this project. We got some congressional earmark money, you know, it's like $4.7 million to improve Blue Ridge Boulevard. And there's been no study done on it. We just got money. You know, it's probably the first time in my career that I've been given grant money without doing a study. So it's like, so it's kind of backwards as we got that. So I think, again, maybe I was talking with Joe, and he said, well, what about that project? And I said, well, you know, I got 4.7 months, but I don't know what to do with it. We need to research it. So I guess I need to go out and hire me an engineer and start on it. And he said, what about design build? And I said, yeah. You know, basically I said, I've got a road, I got some money, show me what you can do with it. And but since it's federal money, it's now MoDOT's involved in it, and environmental stuff on that. We just ended up going a different route. So we kind of, matter of fact, we're designing it in-house because there doesn't need to be a lot of engineering on it. It's kind of a glorified project. So that's one where I thought it would be a good project as design build, but because of just the different agencies that are going to have some review on it, it kind of slowed it down. But Joe, you've got some projects going on out there, don't you?
When you're talking about the different agencies, I mean, on our water wastewater plant, I mean, we have a pretty good relationship with KDHE, both on the water wastewater side. So I don't know that I would really let that stop you. You know, talk to them up front first, and then make sure they're on board as if you need a review, and they understand how critical it is, the timing of the review. Because, yeah, they weren't on board with our time frame to have water wastewater during the build next year for Panasonic. So they've had a year and a half to design and build two $40 million projects. And if we didn't have KDHE on board with that process, we wouldn't even come close to meeting those deadlines. So,
but again, when you got the biggest economic development project in the history of the state of Kansas, I'm sure all the agencies have been told we need to get this thing delivered. So yeah, that helps.
So you still have to go through the process.
Right.
You know, do their due diligence. So I don't know. I guess I'd have to talk to those agencies, tell them what you want to do, and see how that can be accommodated if you want to do it right.
I will go back and address the question about if you're a practitioner, how do you get an owner to get out of the design, bid, build mindset? And if anybody can come up with the answer to that question, oh my God, a multi-million-dollar career ahead of you. You could just go educate people on how to do it. And I find that the biggest stumbling block is that, you know, if you talk about laws in the United States, you've got federal. If federal allows it, states have anonymity, some autonomy. They can limit the federal law. Counties can limit the state law. Cities can limit the county law. So if you're a practitioner and you want to do some work in a particular jurisdiction, you probably have some homework to do to figure out, is this city even, do they have an ordinance that will even allow it? Do they have any kind of procurement policy, like purchasing policies or the procurement policies? If they don't have it, you're going to have a much bigger uphill battle. If you can get into the agency or the city or the municipality, the school district, utility district, and you find out that they do actually mention design build somewhere in the ordinance that created them or has procurement policies, then you can start to have conversations with those people and say, hey, you guys allow this. Next time you're talking and you're looking, you know, take them to coffee, talk to them. Next time you're looking to do a project, let's talk design build, because you have a process. When they don't have a process like Jackson County, you gotta overcome that education process, and not, private owners in particular don't always have an owner's rep that they're gonna hire. They're not gonna spend the money on that. And so then the practitioner, it's harder to push it uphill, as with everything else. It's harder to push it uphill than if somebody's already in the flow and you can just jump on. So unfortunately, it is still an education process for owners, particularly in the private sector.
I think you got a case study.
Yeah, we've talked about all the beautiful benefits of design build, but it doesn't always work out that way. And I don't have a presentation, as I told you, I don't have a presentation on how, on specific design build litigation. But,
While she gets that fired up, in the context of all of that regulation, is CMAR, which is the kind of easiest road compromise then?
Yeah, because it's, I mean, there you're picking your designer, and then you're picking your
Yeah.
structure.
In the spirit of design.
So
build,
it-
but without
yeah.
having all of the,
I think it's sometimes easier to sell to people who don't understand construction. You go back and you go, look, we're gonna have this guy overseeing it all, but we're bidding out the project, and we're going out and we're getting, bids, and we're putting it out there, putting it out to the general public, and we're allowing companies to come in, subcontractors to come in and put a bid. I think it's just an easier sell to people who are not in the construction world every day. But, in design build, a lot of times, most of the time, your design builder does the same thing, right? I mean, most of the time, your design builder goes out and goes and gets 3 different bids for the concrete work and brings them back to the owner and says, here they are, this one's the most, this one's the cheapest, here's some, we like this one because of this, we like this one because of this, and the owner and the design builder jointly make a decision about who the subcontractor is going to be. So I think the way it effectively works isn't that much different, but I think it's sometimes an easier sell to people. You go, we're going to have somebody oversee it, but we're bidding out the project. We're going to make sure we at least see what the lowest bid is on all this stuff.
Didn't the Iowa do a bid that actually state that it allows CMR, but doesn't
Yes.
allow design build, which is
Yeah.
really weird in my
You can
opinion.
do CMAR, but not B.
Yeah, that was just really weird. So they understood part of it.
Right.
So you did get the whole thing.
that's sort of my perception of the politics.
It-
You're doing the thing you want to do, but making it seem like it's.
Yeah, you're going, you're getting a lot of the advantage of the design build because you're getting the people involved, you're getting your team involved early. Which, that's always the biggest thing on all of these, is you get your team involved early and they start, everybody's on the same page, everybody's rowing in the same direction, everybody's working collaboratively to give the owner the best project they can. It's just a different spin on how you present it.
Yeah, because in the opposite direction, and then, if legislatures catch wind of cities doing things, then you have to worry about creating things. Right.
But just to add a little bit more on, in the case, when I was over at Shawnee and then even down at Grandview in a smaller city, our projects aren't real large. So the impression that we got from the design community was on smaller projects, yeah, let's look at alternative delivery. But on the design side, they said, well, we kind of like the CMAR because you got a contract with us, then you got a contract with it. Now we're going to collaborate together, but on some of the smaller projects, the design folks thought they kind of got squeezed out a little bit.
Yeah, I think there's, to your point, and kind of like, I think there's some fear within the design community that they kind of lose a little bit of the, they lose a little bit of the control because, most of the time, 9 times out of 10, the design builder is a contractor. And I think there's some architects that say, we don't want to be, these guys are out and hire their buddies who they're friends with, and, and we want to make sure that we have a shot at the work, to be able to approach the owner directly and try to be the designer. So I think that's some of the, some of the pros on that.
So, do you think what Iowa or North Dakota or Montana need is a massive project that those little contractors probably can't really handle themselves, or that it's going to be so disruptive for the common traffic that getting your project done in 2 years versus 5 years is going to say, oh, okay, now I see it. Yeah, let's do this. Is that maybe what they need is a massive? Because they know, like way back when the Iowa DOT they did design bid build in-house. So Iowa DOT did I-235, and that was all in-house, and that was back in the 90s or whatever. But it seems to me what they need is a massive river crossing or a huge project. Because obviously there's not super populated cities in North Dakota, Montana, or Iowa.
Right.
But I would think that once they had a project like that, that might open their eyes a little bit to, oh, okay, I see it.
I think the challenge you have there is that those projects exist and they go awry and there may be even litigation in the end. It took twice as long as anybody thought it would. It cost twice as much as anybody thought it would. But but they don't have a comparison. They don't have a design build done on time, on budget to say, oh,
Interstate.
maybe we could have done that. They just say, oh, that's the way it goes. So I think they're going to do that. Did you have something?
Yeah, may I make a comment?
Yeah.
From the owner's perspective, I think the challenge, I see a huge difference between Zimmer and design build in my experience, and that is who's got the risk and who's got the control. And from an owner's perspective, CMAR is way more palatable as a baby step into alternative right delivery, because as the owner, I still maintain all of the control. And as government agents, we're used to having control. We're not taught to be flexible and innovative, right? Like, I don't, there's no bottom line or budget that I have to fight for that anybody in the private industry is just grown up having to do, right? So, so I'm used to control, and so, like, and CMAR allows me to keep that control. It also, from the industry perspective, I suspect, I don't know, having no experience, but the owning agency keeps all the risk still, or most of it, I think, in CMAR versus it's more shared in design build. And so I think the industry also would be leery of having to jump into something like design build where suddenly some of the risk, more of the risk is on them. That's my impression. So I can see CMAR as a gateway drug.
Yeah, exactly. I'll just run through this real quick. The city of Hartford wanted to build a baseball stadium for their AA team, the Hartford Yard Goats.
This is a true story.
This is
The
a
yard
true
goats?
story. They are. This is a true story. And it was actually sponsored by Dunkin' Donuts. It's at Dunkin' Donuts Park, home of the Hartford Yard Goats. Say that 3 times fast. Very similar, which I hadn't heard about the KCI airport being done this way, but the city actually had a contract with an architect, Pendulum Studio. They were to design the stadium. They were most of the way through that process when the city then entered a separate contract with a developer called Dono Hartford. Now that does not stand for donut, it stands for Downtown North. Dono Hartford, LLC. Develop a project and complete the architect's plan. The developer gets into a contract with what they call a design builder center plan. So now we're going to do this design build project, sort of, because the architects, there was another contract then between the city, developer, and so Dono and center plan and the city all entered into a third contract directly. All of these have different controls in the contracts as to, say, notice of defects, opportunity to cure, what happens with liquidated damages, what's the budget, what's the deadline, that kind of thing. The contract was assigned in May of 2015 over to the developer and design build team. So we're going to call this a pseudo design build project. Remember, most of the design was already done before that contract was assigned. In December of 2015, there's disputes. Shocking, I know.
Yeah.
The developer and the contractor claim that the owner never gave them control over the design. They weren't going to meet the substantial completion date because the city and the team kept meeting in secret, is how the case says, meeting in secret to increase the scope of design changes. In January 2016, there's a term sheet, another funky word for a little mini contract, but it's only executed between the city and the developer, and center plan's not on it. It increases the budget for the project, a little over $7 million. It extends the substantial completion date from March 11 to May 17. Oh yeah, you got about 6 more weeks, right? 8 more weeks. Prevented changes to the project without city's consent, changed the LDs with the developer. No signature line for center plan, and center plan did not sign it. So in June of 2016, we are past the deadline we're not done, and the city terminates them. The city says, we're done with you. You guys, we're already in our baseball season. We're not playing games here. You suck, go away. And they claim that the developer and the contractor failed to construct in a workmanlike manner. They assessed liquidated damages.
So partially complete.
It was partially complete, yep. So now we're in litigation. So the developer and the contractor sued the city for wrongful termination, breach of contract. They didn't give a notice and opportunity to cure whatever the defects were with the stadium. And they claim that the city was at fault with its agreements with the architect and everything they were doing before the termination and the breach of implied covenant. City files a counterclaim against the contractor and against the developer-contractor duo. They have a trial, and the jury's only asked to decide one question. Which side is to blame for the stadium not being ready by its May 17, 2016 deadline? Okay? Jury comes back and says it was the developer and the contractor, not the city. Well, they then awarded $335,000 in liquidated damages to the city. Everybody appeals because $335,000 isn't what the city wanted. They wanted more, and the other guys, didn't like this outcome anyway. So on the appeal, the appellate court is like, wait. The judge in the trial court eliminated questions that should have gone to the jury. First of all, the developer did not waive its right to contest the design errors, which the trial court judge said they did. There were errors that occurred before the contract was assigned in May 2015. The trial court should have allowed the evidence of those design errors. The city maintained legal control over the architect's work, including its errors and omissions, until it assigned the contract. The developer and the contractor had control between May 2015 and January 2016, so they can't complain about anything in that time frame. But in that term sheet, the city retained its obligations prior to the assignment. So it was unclear who had control over the architect after January 2016. Remember, it was not signed by both the developer and the center plan. It was only signed by one. It should have been for the jury. It was ambiguous as to the city's right to terminate. And even if they had a right to terminate under the contract, the contractor in Connecticut has a common law right or a by law right to notice an opportunity to cure. They weren't given that. So whether or not they could have met the substantial completion date is up to the question for the jury. So basically, we don't know if center plan meant to be part of that term sheet or not. Did they accept it later? If they did, then there's new evidence. So what we need to do here is go back to trial. Do a new trial. This decision came down in May of 2022. Mind you, we were talking about 2015 when these problems first arose. The trial date was set for April 2024, this month. However, after some battlegrounds with the court back at the trial level, in October 2023, the city settled with Dono and Center Plan for $9.9 million. So instead of getting 335 NLEs, they paid out 9.9, just to get it to go away and be done. And by the way, Dono is no longer referred to as Dono because of this lawsuit. Nobody wants to be tied to this lawsuit. So downtown North is no longer called that. It's called something like the North Exchange. And so it's being more developed around the stadium now. Of interest, Dono is an entity completely owned by Center Plan. So remember when the developer signed the contract, the term sheet, and Center Plan didn't? Well, we're playing some little games. Who had contracts with who? I mean, they are separate legal entities, but I was surprised to learn that they were actually on each other. So the lessons learned are your contractual relationships matter. That assignment of the architect's contract was huge. It needed to have more specific language in it. If you're going to modify it, you need to have it very clear. This is why lawyers are important. I'll just throw that in there. Clarity is key. Ambiguity creates opportunity for interpretations. And the wheels of justice turn slowly. It took them from 2014 to 2024 to resolve this.
And the building still isn't done.
It's done, they're playing, but the attorney's fees keep on earning. They kept paying their attorneys all through that litigation, the trial, the appeal. So that's why they wanted to just stop the spend. And sometimes it just makes business sense to settle for a sum of money than to keep on going through litigation. So I think that took us pretty close to our, we have a few more minutes to wrap up, but
As soon as this stadium got built.
it did, yes. Then the Hartford Yard goats are playing. And on the outside of the stadium, there's these 4 signs with symbols or images on it that says, "No goats, no glory." So that's their thing, is, they're playing.
So do you guys see the other states that have not adopted design goals for option? Do you see them changing, or what do you think the next steps are? For like Iowa, there's.
Well, for Iowa, we're gonna have a change in some of the legislature. There's just some really diehard, some of the senators are gonna have to go away. Before DBIA would be, we're spending money on lobbyists again. And then.
Missouri's up in 2026.
Missouri's up in 2026. We have a sunset clause, so we're gonna have to see if we can keep it going. And, I just think that time, obviously, can help generate this, and the more projects, in fact, I think we had some stats you guys heard from earlier in the day, design build work is increasing significantly, so there's more and more case studies of successful projects out there, and I think that that is going to be instrumental in encouraging some of these other states to get on board.
I think one big success of this notable project, Buckle project, so that's design build, right? And how was that map chosen?
So we went through a very in-depth risk assessment with all the third parties and everything in the area, right away, opportunities for innovation. It could have been successful either way. Really what pushed us was some federal grant requirements and timeline, and being able to meet those requirements, design build was going to make it fast enough for us. So, but we had things like railroads that could have posed some schedule risk for us, and so there were some things that we really had to assess on which way we were going to go, but schedule was a big thing that ended up pushing us.
I think that's key to go to your question about Iowa, is what is it going to take in some of these other states, is the federal government's getting more on board with design build, and so if you were to suddenly get federal money for a project that said it had to be done design build.
Or had done the timeline.
Timeline.
Made design build make a lot more sense.
Yeah, makes sense.
I was going to say, in Missouri, we can actually leverage an additional percentage of our federal share by using the kind of bill. So, that's what we're looking at.
So in Iowa, they had in western Iowa, like about 10 or 15 years ago, there wasn't design bid build for that. There wasn't time. So that may be an example that those legislatures would be like, hey, remember, you guys get this done.
Yeah.
This wasn't so much repaired. There was probably a little bit of design in there. So that's almost like a really fast design build. That could be used as an example for like, here's what design build can do for you. They had to do something really quick.
Yeah, you have to get done in a time frame.
Do we have any kind of permits associated with the KDOT US 69 project, I've seen a presentation on that, and it was early in the project where the selection process, where they looked at design build, CMAR, or a few other ones, and I know they landed on design
Any final questions? We're at our time limit, so I want to remind everybody to use the QR code if you want to get credit for today's class. Let's give these guys a round of applause.